In this video, we'll discuss part 2 of the Fulcrum Trigger installation, the components in the slide. Again, if you can detail strip your Glock pistol, you can definitely install the majority of our components. Before we begin, we'll ensure that the firearm is safe and unloaded. Always begin with an unloaded firearm. Ensure that the magazine is removed from the pistol. Visually inspect the chamber to ensure that the firearm is unloaded. I have confirmed that this firearm is unloaded and safe. We will begin by removing the slide from the frame once again. That's done by pulling the slide back about 1/4 of an inch, pulling down on the slide release lever, returning the slide back forward into battery, and then pulling the trigger, and the slide should come off the frame. We'll set the frame aside since we've already done that portion of the installation video. This pistol actually has our ZEV extended guide rod and our color-coded spring system. That's a red 14-pound spring, which I'll set aside, our gold tin barrel. To disassemble the slide, you will once again need your armorer's tool or roll pin punch. We will begin by depressing the striker sleeve, which is a plastic sleeve that's visible on the bottom of the slide, just forward of the post of the firing pin. We'll begin by pressing that sleeve down to relieve spring tension, and then sliding this rear cover plate off. Be careful because there's components underneath this rear cover plate that's under spring tension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my finger on top of it to keep it from ejecting across the room. Once this is removed, we're able to remove our firing pin assembly, the firing pin safety plunger, and then the firing pin plunger from the gun. We will next install the components from the Fulcrum Trigger. You get a number of different components, including a stainless steel firing pin safety. This part drops right into the bottom of the slide. Depress the firing pin safety, and the extractor drops in the side, and then now captures the firing pin safety into the bottom of the slide. The firing pin, we are going to install one of these firing pin springs. They are marked for trigger pull weight. We will begin by using this firing pin spring that's marked for 2-pound pull. There's a trick to installing these components. You can actually use the slide as a fixture, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the firing pin in backwards in the slide, using it as a fixture. I'm cocking it slightly 45 degrees so that the firing pin post sits against the frame. Now what I'm able to do now is pull down on the firing pin spring, and then now I can remove these 2 spring cups. Allows me to remove my firing pin spring, and then now I'm going to replace it with this 2-pound spring. Once again, I'm going to press down on the spring. I'm going to install the 2 halves of the spring cup, and then that drops right back in along with our firing pin safety plunger. Reinstall your rear cover plate. You'll need to press down on the firing pin and the plunger rod. And that is the installation of the components in the slide. We're going to reinstall the barrel and guide rod. Again, this is the ZEV guide rod system, so it's a little bit different than the factory setup. And then install the frame. Now, after you do any type of trigger installation, you should perform what we call the trigger reset test. We're going to pin the trigger to the rear and continue holding the trigger to the rear. We're going to rack the slide forward and back, returning it to the in-battery position. Now I'm going to slowly release the trigger forward, and it should reset normally, which it has. And consequently, afterwards, I should be able to pull the trigger, and it should now release the firing pin. I'm going to do this once more. So it appears that this trigger is functioning properly. Although, if as you're releasing the trigger forward, you either hear or feel the firing pin release, then the trigger is not set up properly and needs to be re-examined before usage.